If I told you that one of America's most shocking murder cases began with road trips, late-night phone calls, and a relationship that looked passionate instead of dangerous, you might not believe me. But this story isn't about a stranger breaking into a home. It isn't about a random act of violence. It's about obsession, about control, and about how love, when mixed with jealousy and lies, can turn deadly. This is the story of Jodi Arias, a case that still divides America to this day. Before the headlines, before the courtroom drama, before the shocking photographs and chilling testimony, there were just two people, Jodi Arias and Travis Alexander. They met in 2006 at a business conference. Travis was charismatic, confident, and deeply involved in his faith. He was the kind of guy people trusted instantly. Jodi was quiet at first, soft-spoken, artistic, and eager to please. To many, she seemed harmless, even fragile. Their connection was immediate and intense. Long conversations, emotional bonding, late-night calls that stretched into early morning. Travis became Jodi's emotional anchor, and Jodi quickly made Travis the center of her world. She moved closer to him, changed parts of herself to fit into his life. And from the beginning, the relationship was complicated. Travis was open about wanting a traditional future, one aligned with his religious values. Jodi, however, didn't fully fit into that picture. Their relationship slipped into a confusing space, part romance, part secrecy, part emotional dependency. Travis dated other women while continuing an intimate relationship with Jodi. He pulled her close, then pushed her away, and Jodi didn't take distance well. This wasn't a normal breakup and move-on situation. Jodi stayed emotionally tied to Travis long after he made it clear he didn't see a future with her. She watched his life closely. She tracked his movements. She held on to the idea that she still mattered to him, even as he tried to move on. What many people didn't realize at the time was how deeply this rejection affected Jodi. Friends later described her as obsessed. She rearranged her life around Travis. She monitored his online activity. She knew details about his schedule that most people wouldn't know. And while Travis believed he had set boundaries, Jodi didn't see them as permanent. In June 2008, Travis was found dead in his Arizona home. The scene was horrifying. He had been stabbed dozens of times. His throat was slashed, and he had been shot in the head. This wasn't a crime of passion in the heat of the moment. This was excessive, personal, violent beyond reason. At first, investigators didn't know who could have done something so brutal. Travis was well-liked, successful. He didn't live a dangerous lifestyle. But very quickly, attention turned to Jodi Arias. She had been one of the last people to see him alive. When police questioned Jodi, she didn't act like someone hiding a secret, at least not at first. She was calm, cooperative, soft-spoken. She denied being involved. In fact, she claimed she hadn't seen Travis in months. But her story didn't hold up. Phone records placed her near his home. Gas receipts showed a long road trip that conveniently avoided leaving a digital trail. And then there were the photographs. Investigators found a camera in Travis's washing machine. Inside it were photos taken just hours before his death. They showed Travis alive, relaxed, unaware of what was coming. And then, suddenly, the images changed. One photo captured him wounded. Another showed him bleeding on the bathroom floor. These weren't staged images. They were real, raw, and terrifying. When confronted with this evidence, Jodi's story changed. She claimed masked intruders had attacked them both. She said she barely escaped with her life. But there was no evidence of intruders. No forced entry. No witnesses. No proof of anyone else being there. Eventually, her story changed again. This time, Jodi admitted she had killed Travis, but she claimed it was self-defense. She described a violent struggle. She said she feared for her life. But prosecutors quickly dismantled that version of events. The sheer number of wounds, the location of the injuries, the execution-style gunshot to the head, none of it matched a desperate attempt to escape. This wasn't self-defense. This was rage. As the trial unfolded, America became obsessed with the case. Courtroom footage aired non-stop. People analyzed Jodi's facial expressions, her voice, her tears. Some saw a cold-blooded killer. Others saw a woman who had been emotionally manipulated and pushed too far. The case became more than a murder trial. It became a cultural phenomenon. Jodi took the stand and spoke for days. She painted herself as a victim. She described emotional abuse. She cried. She smiled at odd moments. She spoke calmly about graphic details. And her behavior confused people. Psychologists weighed in. Experts analyzed her personality. Some suggested narcissistic traits. Others pointed to borderline behaviors. But regardless of diagnosis, one thing was clear. Jodi had not let go. The prosecution argued that Travis's rejection shattered the version of reality Jodi had built, that she could not accept being replaced, that the idea of him moving on was unbearable, and that on the day of the murder, she went to his home with a camera, a weapon, and a plan. They pointed out how carefully she covered her tracks, how she disabled her phone, how she cleaned the scene, how she lied repeatedly. And they asked the jury a simple question. If this was self-defense, why all the deception? The jury convicted Jodi Arias of first-degree murder. But even after the verdict, the story didn't end. Sentencing dragged on. Public debate continued. Some people still argue about motive, about responsibility, about whether Travis underestimated the danger he was in. And that's what makes this case so disturbing. There were warning signs. Obsession, control, inability to accept rejection. But because the relationship was private, because the danger wasn't obvious, no one stepped in. No one imagined it would end this way. This case isn't just about murder. It's about how emotional dependency can turn toxic, how blurred boundaries can become dangerous, and how ignoring red flags doesn't make them disappear. Jodi Arias didn't look like a monster. She didn't act like one at first. And that's what terrified people the most. The idea that someone who appears calm, intelligent, and composed could commit such a brutal act. Travis Alexander lost his life, not because he was careless, but because he underestimated how deeply someone else was attached to him. And Jodi Arias destroyed her own life, chasing a version of love that no longer existed. This story forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. How do we recognize obsession before it turns violent? How do we protect ourselves when emotions override reason? And how often do we confuse intensity with love? Because love doesn't demand ownership. Love doesn't punish rejection. And love doesn't end with a crime scene. The Jodi Arias case remains one of America's most infamous true crime stories, not because it's shocking, but because it's familiar. It began like so many relationships do, with attraction, with hope, with connection, and it ended in a way no one could undo. And that's why, years later, people are still watching, still debating, still trying to understand how love crossed the line into obsession, and how obsession became murder.